can judge the strength of a government by the way in which it cares for its youngest children, but more importantly, by the way in which it cares for the people that educate and care for those children.
Children learn more in the early years of their life and at a faster rate than they ever will. It is one of the most exciting times in what is a lifelong development of human beings. They will learn to trust people in their environment, to love people in their environment, and play-based learning is often misinterpreted. Playing is the way that children learn. Playing is the scaffolding for the adult.
I think the issue around childcare that is always difficult to grasp is that it's, for many, it seems to be just a way where the children would go while the parents are at work. But it's much more than that. Childcare is the first years of development for the children, which have a massive impact on their life. If we think that primary school or secondary school is very important in terms of quality, in terms of learning, the same goes for the early years. And actually, there's many studies that show that it's even more important to have a very good development environment.
Everything, all that educational attainment, everything that's possible for a child, it begins in the early years.
As a society, if we want to be spending less on mental health services, on the criminal justice system, on correcting mistakes that are made along the evolution of a child's life, then you invest there, you invest in the early years. You give that child confidence, resilience, the ability to communicate. Our prisons are full of people, of adults that struggle to communicate, that struggle with their education.
Once they've gone to primary school, if we haven't taught them enough and we haven't caught enough, then we've essentially missed the opportunity for them to, be the functioning adults that we need. And I don't really think people have a good grasp of that.
As I said to an MP the other day when we were talking about youth crime, we were talking about a 13-year-old that had stabbed another 13-year-old. Now that child was a 3-year-old at some point in time. And when you started to delve into the history of that young child, you can see that there hadn't been sufficient interventions. Why would you not want to intervene? Why would you not want to change the life chances of that child? Get it right in the early years, and I'm a real believer of this, and everything else will follow. They will be higher income generators. They will pay more tax. They will cost us less on crime. They will cost us less on health. And yet we do the complete reverse. We put much more into further education, higher education, and then we spend billions of pounds every year trying to fix it.
Sorry, I'm a little bit emotional because I think it's very important what we are doing. We have these little children and we have the opportunity to support them learning and developing together with their parents. Everyone says it's crucial. The first 5 years of a child's life is so important for their further education and their life beyond. So if it is so important, what we want is respect for the educators and for the children, because they deserve more.
We've reached a point where the workforce are ready, many of them are ready to give up.
They've been neglected for years and years and years. There's a lack of training opportunities. Often they're not even earning the minimum wage.
One of my friends, she's worked in early years for about 10 years. She's absolutely brilliant. She's just left to do hairdressing because the money's not good enough. And it's a loss because she's amazing with children. And I'm seeing that a lot. People are just leaving that are great with children.
I'm 30 and I'm still living at home, unfortunately, but that is because of the pay. It's impossible to get a mortgage on the pay scale. I've tried to go down the private renting sector, but I've just had landlords literally just sort of laugh and just say, you're not going to be meeting the criteria.
If you work in early years, You would need to have 20.9 times your salary to be able to buy an average priced home in England.
They're not just underpaid, we know they feel undervalued, they don't feel recognised.
So when I was a secondary school teacher, I felt really proud to say that that was my job. You go to a party or a gathering, or, what do you do? I'm a teacher. When you say you work in childcare, it feels completely different. I felt a real personal sense of a kind of lowering of my social reputation, or my, how people viewed me and how I viewed myself. Being an early years educator and being there right at the beginning and making those kind of really, crucial changes to a child's life, that is the most important thing. So it was really hard to kind of go from status from this to this, but my sense of responsibility went from this to this.
Our people are educators. They change, they shape the lives of children. They make them kind, they make them thoughtful. We should value these people, I think, considerably more. But in this country, I'm afraid, we don't.
Out you go!
It is a physically demanding job, an emotionally demanding job, and it is an intellectually demanding job. We are just so lucky. We still have so many dedicated, very professional practitioners who look after our children and educate them.
With our current childcare system, there's multiple reasons why it doesn't work, but fundamentally it has been chronically underfunded for years. The rate at which the government pays providers to provide things like the 15 so-called free hours, the 30-hour schemes, is so below par.
And that's why we have seen massive closures. That's why there is a lot of media attention around parents having to pay some of the highest costs in the world, frankly.
I haven't raised my fees, but I feel as though I'm getting to a point where I'm going to have to. And it's such an uncomfortable feeling. It's not something I'm looking forward to doing at all, because I know that parents are already struggling, but I'm already struggling as well.
We represent both, day nurseries and childminders, so quite different settings. Because of the lack of funding that they're receiving, they're operating at a loss. This can be, hourly loss per child, so as little as £1, it amounts to a lot of money. Because of that, some have had to close, which obviously decreases availability, which then feeds into the issue for parents who are trying to access childcare. Some businesses have survived purely because they find other ways to supplement this loss. And now what we're seeing with the proposed expansion of the childcare entitlement is that this ability for businesses to make up for the losses, hourly losses per child, are being taken away from them, because they will again fall under another scheme which is likely to be quite underfunded. The reason why I'm saying all this in terms of, the wider economic impact is that feeds directly into the availability of childcare provision. A lot of the recent debate around childcare has been focused on parents, what's available for parents, how is it affordable for parents, and of course that's a very important angle to look at it with. However, unless we support the business and unless we appropriately fund the business, no entitlements can be carried out at no extension if there's no availability.
There are early years in childcare deserts in England, in one of the richest nations in the world. That is not a sector that is functioning well. So it isn't just about affordability, it's about lack of provision in the most disadvantaged communities in the country. So you're further entrenching inequality, you're making it even harder for those families and those parents to get back into the workplace, you're entrenching educational inequality for those children.
Many early years providers have challenges in terms of funding their staff's wages and will sometimes either turn away or ask that the hours are stretched, so families who perhaps cannot supplement their free hours with paying out of pocket will be shut out the door anyway. There's also a challenge in terms of high quality early years education, so there will tend to be quite a big gap in terms of the experiences of babies and young children in wealthier areas and with wealthier families than in those who are not able to access that.
Accessibility to great childcare and great practitioners is crucial. When I compare myself to other parents and other friends that we have, sometimes in our conversations, it's highlighted that there's a distinct difference between the two in terms of the quality. And so they're having to go further afield in order to find better quality practitioners. I think when you're dealing with the future of our children and you're navigating cost of living, you're navigating the pressure on families and households at times like this and interest rate risings and all that stuff, I feel like if we can get this right, it might take some of the pressure off parents and give children an even chance, a fairer chance.
If you're on a very low income and you have a 15-month-old child and your child could do with a little bit more socialisation, where is your offer? Unless you're back into work, you have nothing. Surely that's the sort of family that you'd be wanting to support. Surely that's the sort of family where you would play to the levelling up agenda. It's the complete opposite. The policies are a complete reversal of all of that.
The educational system is one important tool by which these inequalities can be reduced, but that doesn't start in primary school, it starts much earlier.
Childcare is the thing that draws out all of those other flaws in the system at the moment as well. Childcare conspires with poor parental leave. It conspires with lack of flexible working to keep women, predominantly women, out of work. In a two-income heterosexual household, it's normally the mother that's the lower earner. So when you're faced with like extortionate fees like we have now with childcare, it makes sense that it's the woman that steps back from the workforce because we don't allow or support dads to stay home. She's the one that's earning less anyway because we have a gender pay gap. Parents are having to have the families that they can afford to have, not the families that they want to have. That's not choice. And if a sector can't enable that choice, it's not working.
The idea of choice is paramount in the discussion around childcare, but it's being used in a very perverse way. So the justification for many years for non-intervention by the state in family life has been that, parents can make the choice they want, and therefore we don't have to intervene to provide options because they are, free, etc., etc. But the problem is those choices are constrained because they have caring constraints, and childcare is one of the biggest, as we know, and that's why we find so many parents and especially mothers who are not able to continue the job. There are those who think genuinely that they would prefer staying at home, but having the option of a high quality childcare where their children can go doesn't prevent that. It would actually enable a genuine choice, a free choice, not a constrained choice that is being portrayed almost ideologically about the type of state that we live. And it also enables fathers.
I think just to have the choice or the freedom, particularly in your child's formative years, to be able to stop, to pause, and to invest time into those children can quite literally influence the trajectory of that child's life. Those who are aware of their mental health, aware of what the formative years can do for a child and what their formative years did for them, aware of their insecurities, that generation of fathers, they are trying to be intentional with their children. They're trying to invest time.
We talk about the educational attainment, what it means for their education, but there are other outcomes that matter for children. Children deserve to grow up in a happy, secure, healthy environment, and if their parents can work, that's more likely to happen. They're more likely not to grow up in poverty. They're more likely to grow up in a household where there's some financial resilience, where their parents aren't stressed.
Inadequate childcare creates an enormous strain for families and for relationships within families.
What about actually supporting more parents with early years care in their homes? What about doing what other countries are doing, having a rounded approach to it?
Parents should be able to choose to go to work if they want to. They should be able to choose to put their children into early years education if that's what they want to do. If they want to stay home, they should be supported to do that. And currently, the system is so broken, there is no choice in it.
Talk to parents and they just, in certain parts of the country, they just want to find any form of childcare. And that can mean children with special needs just go into a setting because it's a setting. But it might not happen to have the kind of really specific training and Senko provision that's needed for that child.
Whilst providers aren't allowed to turn down a child based on their complexity. The reality is, if they are feeling like they don't have the confidence or the experience, the knowledge or the qualifications to support this child, this baby, then as a parent, you're not going to leave your child there. They still deserve a place in early years education. Their mothers still deserve to choose whether they go back to work or not.
It's very common to see that there are then challenges in terms of, okay, I'm caring for my child or children who have disabilities, but I might have another child, and where do they go when I'm looking after my child who has the disability? So there's a need in terms of respite care, but also in terms of practical childcare.
84% of mothers with a disabled child do no paid work outside their home. If you live with disability, you are vastly more likely to live in poverty. Part of that is the lack of value placed in the individuals with the disability themselves and the people who care for them, which I feel like dovetails beautifully into the lack of value that is placed in early years education.
The quality of the provision matters. And that's very important because obviously the quality requires investment, it requires staffing with very good qualifications and good pay, important relational contact with the children. It would cost much more than what it is being spent today. But it will also create a lot of employment because obviously you have to hire all that staff, including amongst the mothers who had reduced time because of the constraints for children. So it will also increase their employment rate. And if you look at the earnings that they would maintain, which at the moment they don't have, and the tax revenue that comes out of it over their lifetime, it actually pays for itself. Even fiscally speaking, it's a no-brainer that the government will recoup entirely the investment for all the children. So on that purely economic, narrow sense of fiscal return, it pays for itself. Not all policies pay for themselves over time, but childcare is one. It's the one policy that is touching on so many aspects of life and so many aspects of the economy that reducing inequalities and providing the best chances for children from an early stage is the best investment that society can make.
If we invest in children, not only do we take a huge weight off those families' minds and the grandparents and the carers that look after those children, it gives us a future. It gives us an economic future, but it gives us a social future as well.
By raising the standards of early years education, surely everybody's attainment goes up. Everybody rises together.
In those countries that have really worked hard to get a better system, as in Germany, as in the Nordic countries, a system that meets the needs of children and of families and of practitioners, that in those countries, those developments have been preceded by a national debate. People coming together from all sorts of different directions.
Many different organisations, both non-profit and even at times corporate and private sector or membership bodies, will find that they are trying to tackle the same issue just through different angles. There are so many different stakeholders in the early years system working efficiently.
There's a wonderful saying that says, if you want to go quickly, go alone. But if you want to go further, and we have a long journey to go together. And the coalition offers that opportunity to collectively move the support for families and the support for children further than any single organisation would do.
We have this real favourable, really rare window of opportunity to do something incredible, to really, really transform something for children, for the economy, for families. We have to be braver. We have to be more inclusive about what the solutions look like, and we have to keep talking to each other, and that is what the coalition is for. The coalition is a way to achieve that. The coalition is the vehicle, it is the route to a better future for early years.
Children and families need this coalition.
Parents of disabled children need this coalition.
Dads need this coalition.
Student parents need this coalition.
Single mums need a coalition.
Women in business need this coalition.
Society needs this coalition.
We need this coalition.